everyone, Preston here with another video, and this time we're going to be doing something that I've been asked about for a while, because for some odd reason people think that these are really good with backgrounds, and that means that I'm good with making backgrounds, but specifically people have been asking me to do more an in-depth tutorial on how to draw clouds. So we're going to just jump right into it and talk about the process that I think of when I make backgrounds a little bit, but specifically more when it comes to clouds and the fluffiness of all of them. So let's get into it. All right, so with many of my pieces, you've probably noticed I do a lot of clouds. So with many of my brushes or sceneries, you notice that I use a cloud brush or a brush that I've gotten from friends, but for simplistic sake, I will try to keep only to the basic brushes besides my sketch brushes. So I'll be using a soft brush and probably a hard brush here and there to work on this so that you guys can pause, catch up, things like that, just to learn how I work on these sceneries, okay? Now remember always to make a new layer after your background so you don't mess up, and so you can always go back and make up a new sketch later on. So we're going to call this first layer sketch, and I'm going to quickly go into what exactly I do when it comes to figuring out the layout of these different sceneries. Now this is going to be a cloud-based scenery, so it's going to be a big cloud. I'm thinking blue skies, a little bit of cloudiness, and then maybe some little scenery just to give a little bit of perspective into the cloud. So with that, one little tip is when you're looking up at something, the lower the horizon is. So we're going to put the horizon below right about there. So that's going to be the horizon line for this piece. And that's just because when you want to look up to something, the horizon line goes farther down. When you're looking down to the ground, the horizon line could be going there or higher. You can experiment, play with it. It just depends. My rule of thumb is lower third is when you're looking up, upper third is when you're looking down. Straight plateau right in the middle is where you're looking right at something that's on the edge of the horizon. So there's your little tip for it, but you could always add a little bit of, contrasto or like a little interest by adding a different angle to this piece or your horizons or background. And I think I'm going to do that for this one just to add a little bit more dimension to this piece. So next we will be working on figuring out where the cloud is. Now, with that, a lot of people think you can just draw shapes. Now, I'm trying to do a tutorial on how I figured out how to do clouds. So we're going to make another layer, and this time we're going to do a polygon tool. Now I already have it set up where it makes the perfect perspective thing. Now you can look this up later, or I can show you guys later on how to do this. This is specifically to do clouds, and you can do perspective in any way that you want. Okay, so we are going to move this to where I feel the perspective is. And let's put it right there, give it a little bit more of, I'm trying to give it as much power or as much dynamic interest into this piece as possible, because we are just drawing a cloud, okay? Simple. Clouds are fluffy. They're marshmallows. Let's continue on. Have a perfect area where we will be drawing that cloud. See where all this is? Now, you're like, but clouds, why do they need perspective? Everything is in perspective when it comes to sceneries. Everything. And that's the cool thing about clouds, is that when you get to the point where you can understand this, this is just a tutorial on how to do this. When you get well into learning how to draw, sometimes you don't need to follow all these guidelines. So we're back into the sketch layer, and I am going to draw boxes. Now, this is something I actually learned from A quick tutorial on Pinterest is that clouds are just very marshmallow-like boxes. So you just need to, I'm making this as easy as possible. Alright, so I have here the perspective of what these clouds are going to look like. These are basic clouds. You can really just throw them together really simply. You don't have to be perfect on these cubed shapes. And I'm going to be adding more to this. This is just to get the base shapes on this extravagant piece. If you want to, you can follow the exact way I'm doing this, or you can do it yourself. I recommend you doing it yourself. But what we're going to do now is we're going to quickly just sketch out the rounder shapes of everything. I'm going to change up the whole thing. This is my second sketch layer, so this is what I would call it. And it's just the same way that you turn squares and cubes into balls. So work on that, and we'll get back in touch in just a little bit, okay? Alright, so now that you guys saw me do the sketch, you'll probably notice that I added a lot more roundness to it, ignored some of the squareness that I had, and just kind of went with the flow of the composition for clouds. Now this is where it gets a little tricky because it's something where you just kind of go with the flow because they're just solid or condensed water. So it's very unique to push clouds into any specific way. Yes, there's a lot of clouds, and I'll show how I can add those different types of clouds into this, but this is just fluffy clouds. We're just drawing fluffy clouds. So next is the background, and you can do a number of ways to add the background. You can make a gradient with this being blue, like a deep, let's go about right there, that blue, and making this another blue, but making it lighter, and different ways to just help add to the composition. And there we go. I think that's pretty good. Easy. Backgrounds are fairly fast. You can just add them willy-nilly, in my opinion. And then, you know, another layer for the base shapes. So this is going to be the background. And then we're going to have the foreground, base, and then we're going to also have a layer for the cloud base. So now that we got the base of the foreground and the background going, we're going to get the clouds, because the cloud is the character in this piece. And that's one thing you all have to remember, is that clouds and anything you make into an illustration can be its own character. So the background is just as much of a character as the characters you draw. You don't have to focus on the background as much when you have characters in them, but we're here to focus on the background this time. So what we do is, I personally like going for something just under white. We don't want to go too white because then it's really hard to build down. I like going just under white because it helps me realize that this isn't going to be the darkest or the lightest areas of this piece. And you'll notice while I'm shading or coloring this in, I'm not being very particular on following my sketching when it comes to these clouds. Because when it comes to clouds, they have little foofs. They have little things that are floating around them. They don't really have a complete solid form. So, working on that, you can actually get these fairly quickly being roughed out. You don't need clouds to be perfect. That's one of the cool things about drawing or painting clouds. Next, we're going to be doing shading and shadows for the base thing. you'll want to learn how to do by testing out with the fundamentals. I have a fundamentals on shading in my past videos, so if you want to check those out, please do, and that will help you guys out with making these clouds look better. So check that out, and then continue from right here. Now, one thing when you look at this is that there's a lot of blue. Yes, I have a little bit of, green here, a little bit of warmth coming in, but it's a lot of blue, and your surroundings when it comes to shading are going to affect the color. So what I do is I grab the darkest and then I push it to more of the gray area, because that's going to help promote the colors that are going to be in this. So now you just go in and quickly do these shadows. And we'll be right back after I get done with all the shadows, okay? Alright, so I now have those base shadows into this illustration of clouds. We're going to just quickly show you what's going on. So you can see that right now there's some spots missing here and there. But for the most part, this is looking like a very simple cloud. Like some people, you could, if you want to, you could probably stop here. You can probably just push it a little here and there. Nothing crazy, But this is pretty much how I make clouds every single time I make clouds in all my other illustrations. So I just base shape, base color, rendering it, lighting, boom. And these are just the white and blues. I love doing color-based ones because it's harder or it's trickier and it gives a little bit more emphasis to the color theory. With that, now what you can do is you get a new layer and you add for the base light. That will be where we actually use the white that we wanted earlier. Now I'm bringing up the shading or the sketch again just so I can get some more of these details that I illustrated before, so that they are a little more illuminated with all of the details I would like, all the little scrumptious little shadings and lightings, because this all is how the fundamentals work. You want to make sure that they're all working correctly with everything. This is where the fun begins, because now you can see it's looking more like a cloud. There's a little more here and there's a little more there. It's starting to look like a decent cloud. It's great, but it's just seeming a little too flat. Now what you can do is very simple, and that's to get your smudge brush in. Just kind of fiddle with where all the placements are and get them into a less organic or more organic, depending on where your perspective is, feel for where the clouds are going to be placed, where the lighting is going to be placed. Okay? And then after you do all this, it's rendering time. So I'm going to quickly render this out on a new layer, make it called render. And I'm going to paint over what I've done already and try pushing those lightest lights and the darkest darks as much as I can and try to add those little details. So I'm going to just quickly render this out, give it a little more flair with the background and the foreground, and I'll see you guys towards the end. Alright, so this is a quick illustration on how to draw clouds. I mean, I'll probably keep working on this because it's fairly fun. I enjoy working on making clouds, honestly, and trying to make sure they look super easy and simple for everyone to understand a little bit, because it's super fun to make clouds and make floofy things. Thank you everyone for watching today's video. It was super fun working on this quick tutorial with you guys. If you guys have any questions about it or want to learn more about some art tips, let me know in the comments down below. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.